He came to the same train station every single evening for 50 years. Rain or shine, he sat on the same bench, wearing the same suit, holding the same photograph in his trembling hands. People thought he was mad, a poor old man stuck in time. But he wasn't mad. He was in love. She promised she'd return on that very platform one summer evening. But she never did. And he never stopped waiting. Strangers came and went. Trains arrived and left. But he stayed, quiet, still, watching, believing that one day she would walk off that train and smile like she used to. But what happened in year 50 shocked the entire city, because the truth was never what anyone imagined. It was the summer of 1975. The sky was clear. The birds were singing. And a young man named Thomas stood at platform 3, holding the hand of the woman he loved. Her name was Evelyn. She wore a yellow dress, and her eyes sparkled with hope and sadness. She was leaving for another city to take care of her sick mother. But before she stepped onto the train, she turned to Thomas and whispered, "I'll be back in 1 week. Same time, same place. Promise me you'll wait for me." Thomas held her tightly. "I promise. I'll be right here." The train pulled away, and she disappeared into the distance. Days passed, then weeks, then months. Thomas came to the train station every evening at 5. He wore the same navy blue suit, combed his hair the way she liked, and brought fresh flowers, just in case she returned that day. At first, people at the station smiled at him. Some asked if he was okay. Others said, "She must be really special." But as years passed, the questions stopped, and whispers began. He's still waiting. Maybe she left him. Maybe she died. But Thomas said nothing. He just sat on that old wooden bench every evening, at the same time, holding Evelyn's picture and staring at every train that arrived, just in case she stepped out. 10 years passed, then 20, then 30, and still, Thomas showed up at the station every evening at exactly 5 o'clock. His hair turned gray. His steps became slower. But his eyes, they stayed the same, filled with quiet hope and silent pain. He stopped talking to people, but he never stopped watching the trains. Every time the doors opened, he stood up, looking, searching, waiting. But she never came. People in the town started calling him the ghost groom. Children were told stories about him. Tourists asked to take pictures with him. But Thomas never smiled for a single photo. He only smiled when he looked at her photograph. Some said he had gone mad. Others believed he was holding on to something no one else could see. A few tried to convince him to move on, to go home, to forget. But he always said the same thing. She promised. And in his heart, that promise was the only thing more powerful than time, more loyal than memory, more painful than loss. Then, one stormy evening, exactly 49 years later, something strange happened. A young woman walked up to Thomas, holding an old letter in her hand. She said, "Are you Mr. Thomas, the man who waited here for Evelyn?" He looked up slowly, his hands trembling. "Yes. Why do you ask?" And what she said next would break his heart and awaken a truth no one in that town was ready for. The young woman looked nervous. Rain dripped from her coat. Her hands shook as she held the letter. She said, "My grandmother asked me to find you. Before she passed away, she made me promise." Thomas stared at her. His lips parted, but no words came. His heart pounded, like it hadn't in years. She handed him the letter. The envelope was yellow with age, the corners soft, and the handwriting was hers. Evelyn. Thomas held the letter tightly, afraid it might disappear. He opened it slowly and began to read, his eyes filled with tears. As the rain continued to fall, the letter said, "Dearest Thomas, I'm so sorry. I never came back. I tried. I truly did. But something happened. That changed everything." She explained how, on her way back to him, she had met with a serious accident. It left her unable to walk or write for a long time. She was taken in by strangers, in a town far from his, with no way to contact him. She spent years trying to find her way back. But time passed, and hope faded. "I always believed you would forget me," but a part of me prayed that maybe you didn't. She wrote, "If you are still waiting, I want you to know I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day." At the end of the letter, there was one last line that shattered the silence around him. "I waited too, just not at the same station." Thomas's hands trembled. The letter fell into his lap, and the entire station seemed to stand still. The rain outside turned softer, but inside, Thomas felt like a storm had just begun. He looked up at the young woman. Where was she? Where did she wait? His voice was cracked, barely a whisper. The woman nodded. "She returned to a station just 3 towns away. She thought that was where you meant. She waited there every Sunday for years, in her wheelchair, hoping you'd come find her. But when you didn't, she thought, maybe you had moved on." Thomas's heart dropped. He wasn't angry. He wasn't bitter. But he felt the weight of a life caught in the hands of time. 2 souls, so close, yet separated by one small misunderstanding. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, a tear rolled freely. Not because she was gone, but because she had waited too. "I would have walked across the world if I had known," he whispered. The young woman gently placed a second envelope in his hand. "She left this too. She said if I ever found you, and you were still alive, you deserved this." He opened it. Inside was a faded photograph of them, young, smiling, on that very platform, and on the back, a single line written in Evelyn's delicate handwriting. "If we don't meet again in this life, wait for me at the next station." Thomas clutched the photo to his chest, and for the first time in decades, he didn't wait for the train. He stood up and slowly walked away from platform 3. Thomas didn't return to the station the next evening. For the first time in 50 years, the bench sat empty. The pigeons still fluttered around. The train still came and went. But the man, who had become part of that station's soul, was gone. The townspeople noticed. Some were relieved. Others were quiet. But a few felt like something beautiful had ended. A week later, a notice appeared in the local paper. Thomas Whitaker, age 77, passed away peacefully in his sleep. No family was listed. No possessions mentioned. Only one sentence stood out. He waited with love and left with peace. But that wasn't the end, because the young woman, Evelyn's granddaughter, did something no one expected. She took the bench, the one Thomas had sat on all those years, and had it moved to the train station where Evelyn had waited. She placed it right under the old clock and fixed a small bronze plaque on it. It read, "For Thomas and Evelyn, who waited at different stations, but never stopped loving." Travelers still pass by that bench. Some sit, some cry, some read the plaque and hold hands a little tighter, because they realize love doesn't always arrive on time. But true love never misses its train. It just finds a way, even if it takes a lifetime. Years passed, but the story of Thomas and Evelyn never faded. In fact, it grew. It became a legend, told from one traveler to another, whispered by old station guards, shared by lovers waiting for their trains. That bench became a place of reflection, a sacred corner of the world, where people came not just to sit, but to remember, to believe, to hope. Some came to say goodbye to someone they lost. Others came to whisper promises to someone far away. A few came just to feel the warmth of a love that never gave up. Every year on the date Thomas passed, people brought yellow flowers, the same color as Evelyn's dress, and placed them on the bench. Children would ask, who were they? And parents would say, they were 2 people who waited their whole lives to find each other again. And far beyond this world, at a place no train could ever reach, a different station stood. Timeless, bright. Evelyn stood there, smiling, still wearing that yellow dress. And when Thomas finally arrived, she looked at him, took his hand, and said, "I knew you'd find the right station one day." They didn't speak after that. They didn't need to, because love, real love, needs no words, no clock, no map, just 2 hearts, and a promise kept. Even after a lifetime, he waited not for days, not for months. but for a lifetime. Not because he was weak, but because his love was strong. In a world that moves on too fast, he stood still, holding on to a promise that time could not erase. She never came back, but he never stopped believing. And maybe, just maybe, that kind of love still exists. Because sometimes, the most powerful stories are not found in fairy tales, but on quiet benches, at empty train stations, where one man waited for the love that time could not take away. Thank you for watching, and if this story touched your heart, don't forget to share it, because someone out there might still be waiting too.